We're here, Serial, Miller, to talk about Destiny 2 Forsaken. Just for a setup for you, Miller. Last week,
yes,
Serial did a very good job. He was very eloquent as ever of giving kind of like a high-level overview of the campaign, taking down a different Baron, stuff like that. So that's where our audience is really at. But I'm excited to hear your thoughts, Miller, because you were not involved with the Forsaken cover story content in terms of this podcast.
Yeah.
Because you were busy with other things.
Yes.
And so that's why I'm so excited. I don't know your take on this game really hardly at all. So you've been playing...
We had like the cover story that I did, the print story, and then like,
And then for the online stuff, you're busy. But for this game overall, you've played a lot of it at this point, I'd assume.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about
it? It's great.
Yep.
I think is the word I would use. It's excellent.
Excellent.
It might be their best expansion.
Okay, because in everyone's mind, I feel like it was, okay, they're kind of positioning this thing as the Taken King equivalent for Destiny 2, but that is a high bar. That's the last time I really loved Destiny, I feel like. And you're saying it hits that again?
I would say that the verdict is still out, and it's very hard with a game like any game like this, World of Warcraft, Destiny, these deep, involved, lengthy games, to really have a true determination this early to be able to say, like, this is better than Taken King.
Some issues might arise 2 months in. Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that some great things could arise 2 months in.
Yeah.
That, new events and new secrets that get found, all that stuff is still in process. And so I think it's hard to really confidently say that it's quote unquote better than Taken King, but it's certainly in that running.
Wow. Okay.
It does a lot of the things that I think longtime Destiny players have wanted to see have happen. It addresses many of the problems that have plagued the game since Destiny 2's launch last year around this time.
What are the big bullet points there?
Well, people didn't like the new weapon slot system. Many people didn't like it. There was an overall sense that the structure of play was maybe oversimplified in the name of bringing new players in, which, by the way, Destiny 2 did bring new players in. For all the things that over the last year the community around that game has harped about and complained about and all that kind of stuff, it's very easy to forget that in the very first couple of weeks of play, it drew in a whole new batch of players, and that even a lot of players, myself included, really, really enjoyed Destiny 2 in its first few weeks.
And then the problems started to get bigger and bigger.
The problems that were present were things that made the long-term game less enjoyable the longer you played. The token economy, the nature of team shooting in the competitive play, so that you could never feel like you were gaining quite as much mastery as you wanted to. There was just a host of things that people got frustrated about.
Right. I think a lot of it had to do with sort of the way that objectives were sort of like split up into like, here is your weekly run of milestones, and that will get you better gear. And then
you were done.
Yeah. And then if you want to sort of, there's these, everything else felt like extracurricular. If you want to chase armor sets, if you want to sort of engage with basically like a lot of the collection aspect, that was sort of a thing you did on the side after you were done with the main milestone stuff. So it felt like here are all these important aspects to like a loot-based game that are being kind of thrown by the wayside in favor of like chasing a number.
And Destiny 2 at its core, in addition to those system-based things, which I think you're summarizing really well there, Suriel, there was also the fact that there was a tonal inconsistency that increasingly became grating over time with Destiny 2.
Losing the magic. I remember you had that complaint.
Right. It felt at times like while the actual core campaign was a pretty well-told story structurally, and you went to interesting locales and the destinations were beautiful to look at, there was something about the overall feel of the writing and of the storytelling that felt like it had missed something about what's magical about Destiny. This sort of mystical, fantastical element, this mystery, a certain level of kind of darkness. That
literal darkness.
Not literal darkness, figurative darkness, right? Like that there was something that felt like, well, everybody's trying to crack a joke in the midst of these like situations where it should really be really serious, like humankind is about to go extinct.
But now thankfully Cade 6 is dead, so there's no more jokes in Forsaken.
I haven't heard a peep out of Failsafe in a long time. I'm very happy.
I think that by comparison, Forsaken is a much more nuanced storytelling experience. It actually has some genuine pathos that it develops over the course of its story, and it's a darker story that is dealing a lot with issues of does it matter why we do things, the intent behind why we kill people or kill aliens or whatever, or not,
or chase levels,
right? Or chase levels, or grow more powerful, right? And a lot of those systems ideas that Suriel was talking about have also been addressed in meaningful ways that make both the progression curve and the experience of gameplay a lot more fulfilling.
Yeah. Are you as charmed overall as Miller is here?
I think so. Like, I think my favorite things about it so far is that it feels like Miller said, it sort of brings that stuff that I mentioned as being extracurricular more to the surface, because basically, like, anything you do will eventually gain you the progress that milestones used to give you, but now it's all tied to challenges, which feel like you're out there chasing things and also, you know, collecting armor sets, which are now a lot easier to sort of want because they have like a new collection screen where you can see, here's all the stuff, here's how to get them, and if you do more of this activity, you'll get you'll be rewarded with this armor. Yeah. But also it's tied to the bounty system, which has you basically going to the vendor, getting these bounties to do specific tasks, which are easy to accomplish, but then those are eventually tied to, if you gain enough experience, you'll get powerful gear. And so you're basically chasing multiple objectives at once, which sort of makes that, like, it's better about instilling that sort of like, I'm so close to completing this thing that makes a loot grind game so much more enticing.
Yeah.
And I think Destiny has finally gotten to that place where I don't want to stop playing because like the next sort of big goal is right around the corner, and you want to keep rounding those corners.
Totally, I get the pitch. It's always funny when you've been out of the loop of Destiny's grind for a little bit to be like, dude, this treadmill goes so fast. You got to get on this treadmill because sprinting's so much fun.
Right.
It's like, why would I want to get on that treadmill if it's just never ending?
I think the curve, at least as it has made itself apparent in this first week, is very appealing because you're chasing the thing, you're doing the activities that you want to do, and you can consistently go do those activities and expect that you're going to get a small but meaningful improvement. There's a big space between what that people call the soft cap of power and the hard cap, and that's going to be a really long grind, but the things that you're doing along that grind generally offer new items that are going to move you up the scale a little bit.
Okay.
And there's just a lot of new things. Like I think if you had just introduced Forsaken as here's a whole restructuring of the game, I think it would have been pretty solid. But I think layering stuff like Gambit, like the Tangled Shore, like the Dreaming City, and all these sort of disparate quests that they're now giving you. Like I have 2 exotic quests that I'm chasing independently. And then a bunch of bounties and stuff that I'm chasing all of this stuff all at once, but I'm also doing new, like, exciting things to get those things done, which like basically rounds out the other stuff like Crucible by making it a smaller component of a larger whole, I think.
And while you're doing those things that Suriel's talking about, they've done a great job of offering opportunities for layering, where you're taking multiple tasks that you might want to complete and having that fun element of saying, like, okay, well, I can work on this exotic quest where I need to get this many kills with this type of weapon in the Crucible, but I can also get these bounties. I can pick up these bounties from shacks that are going to let me, okay, I'm going to get some more Crucible tokens that way, and simultaneously I'm going to be doing this other thing. Like there's this sense that in any one activity that you're doing, you're feeling kind of smart. Mm-hmm. Because you're thinking about those ways that you're improving along multiple scales at the same time.
Right. Even something as simple as like, all right, you'll have sort of 2 objectives that are like get kills with a shotgun and get kills with arc damage. Well, I have this arc shotgun, so I'm going to get both of those done at the same time.
Right. And that makes you feel like, oh, I'm
optimizing,
tricking the game. I'm
beating
optimizing
the system.
I'm beating the system.
Yeah.
So there's that stuff going on. I would say, at this point, and again, it's very hard early on to make concrete claims about a game like this, but at this point, the one negative that I would have to say about the game is that there are times that in its attempts to emulate what was successful about Destiny 1 and integrate that into what is good about Destiny 2.
Systems-wise.
Yes.
Okay.
Some things are going to be overly complicated to people who aren't totally plugged into the game.
What kind of stuff?
Well, for instance, the upgrade system for your weapons, your infusion process, that kind of thing, is much more complicated now than it was before. For someone like Suriel or myself who's playing this game multiple hours every day, I don't think that's going to be an issue, because you're generally understanding, okay, well, this is where I go to get this thing. It says that I need this particular planetary material. I just need to go here to get that, or I can go to this other vendor and buy it. But if you're a player who's maybe a lapsed player or somebody who plays the game a little bit more casually, I think it's going to be harder to wrap your head around some of that stuff. In many ways, Destiny 2's base game felt like it appealed too far towards that casual, accessible market in the long term.
Okay.
And it's possible that Forsaken is going a pretty long distance the other direction. That it's very much catered towards players like myself who are like, this is my hobby, man. I'm going home and I'm playing Destiny 2 tonight, and we're going to go do this, and we're going to do this, and I'm going to get with my clan, and we're going to like do this activity. And I think that the story that for more casual players, you're certainly going to be able to enjoy Forsaken. The storyline is really great. I think it's their best story.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I really do. Because it's more personal, because they like focus on characters and they focus on like how you as a guardian are doing what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing and that kind of thing. You're going to be able to enjoy that story, and the campaign is a lot of fun, and the destinations you go to are a lot of fun. But I think that if you're not going to be like going to the community pages every day, going to Destiny Reddit or going to the Bungie forums, if you're not going to be going online to look for guides of like, what am I supposed to do once I get to the Dreaming City?
Right.
Without that component, there may be things that people are like, well, why am I still... I don't even know what to do now in this game.
Yeah.
Right.
Even as like as someone who's played a lot of Destiny, like that, the material system feels like needlessly complex because, it also like it de-incentivizes you constantly infusing things, which is sort of how I play Destiny, which is
agree.
I have a favorite gun and I'm just going to keep powering that gun up because I like it so much.
Yeah.
Whereas now I feel like because it is taking up this other resource that you have to go out of your way to get in a lot of cases, it feels like I'm less incentivized to like constantly keep bringing up my guns.
I think this is going to be an ongoing debate within the community for Destiny, because a lot of people like that there is that deeper grind for materials and for legendary shards and for masterwork cores, and you really got to work to get those infusions. And I get that argument, and to some degree I'm on board with that. But it ignores the fact that for a lot of players, the joy of the Destiny experience is experimentation. And if it costs a tremendous amount to be able to pull up interesting items to make them viable for use at high-level play, people just aren't going to do it.
Yeah.
And so you're just going to get a drop and be like, well, this is the highest level thing I have. I better put on this shotgun. I don't really want to use this shotgun, but I better use it, because if you're not a player who has a lot of those materials, and you're maybe a little bit more casual of a player, I think it's going to be hard to feel like it's worth going back and grinding for that stuff.
Right.
So that's a long explanation of the one thing that I have concerns about here. It's just that there are many things. It's very clear that Bungie and High Moon Studios looked at the success of Destiny 1, looked at the way that hobby players enjoyed playing that previous game, and said, like, what can we pull over? What can we make Destiny 2 better with by looking to our previous work? And in so doing, I think in most cases they've made something better. That is an amalgamation of the two. But in a few situations, it maybe has gone a little bit too far towards needless fiddliness.
Interesting. Yeah. It's funny to think of Bungie zigging and zagging with every release here. Like, what about this stance? What about this stance? What about this stance? With Forsaken now, does it look like Destiny 2 was a worthy experiment, just maybe a little bit too bold? Like, how do you look back on Destiny 2 in general? I know you covered like a lot of the basics in the beginning, but is it, you think, something that the series should have done, that they should have been so bold and experimental with kind of shedding the past, or was it just all out a mistake at this point?
I am very hesitant to label Destiny 2's core game as a mistake. I think there were I think that there were a lot of things that were really smart in Destiny 2. I with the passing of months, I've taken increased issue with the decision to leave behind Destiny 1.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like with each passing month, I felt like, I kind of think this game might be stronger if it was just a continuation of what the original game had been, with like some changes to systems. But there's lots of reasons why that didn't happen, not the least of which is that there were behind-the-scenes technical changes to the way they wanted to make the game.
Yeah.
That made it impossible, I think, to be able to carry stuff over from D1. But there were things about Destiny 2 that drove away a lot of their audience, and ultimately that's a big problem in today's game sphere of players. Once you lose somebody, it is very hard to get them back. I think Forsaken, for players who are willing to give it a shot, the players who loved Destiny 1 and loved its expansions like Taken King and Rise of Iron, if you dropped into Forsaken now after being somewhat disillusioned with what was on offer in Destiny 2, you will be impressed. Yeah, I think it's really strong and does a lot of things right. But unfortunately, the nature of what the base game did, drove a lot of people away, and some of them aren't going to come back.
Right. A lot of the times it feels like when you do something like that, you become like someone who used to smoke or someone who used to eat meat. You just become the most sort of like adamant person against that thing.
Yeah, I totally know what you mean. I agree. Now, on the other hand, Destiny 2 brought in a bunch of new players, and if some of those players have stuck around and are now ready for that deeper, more involved progression system and a more complex weapons slot system, and Crucible that's maybe a little bit more built around mastery and growth and that kind of thing. I don't know how it all balances out. In the end, though, I would say that Forsaken is something that feels right now, a week in, like it's what the player base for that game wanted it to be.
Oh, good.
Right.
Good.
I think there are some looming possible issues. Right now, I think the biggest one is that I'm not light enough, I'm not powerful enough to run it yet, but there's a new thing called the Blind Well, which is sort of this repetitive, like, wave-based mode that we played during our cover story, which I think is really cool.
And we have a new gameplay today video of it too, right? Okay.
But right now, it still relies on sort of a lot of the same mechanisms as Escalation Protocol, which oftentimes requires you to sort of circumvent the game in order to have like the best experience. So
for matchmaking, you mean?
Right.
Yeah.
So you can only bring 3 people in to your fire team, but a lot of people have said like the best way to run this is with 6 people. So you basically have to figure out a way to like, let's both get in the same instance, and we're both going to try to get our fire. Like once these 2 random players have basically matched up in the same instance, they're both going to bring in their friends, and now we have 6 people instead of sort of dedicated matchmaking, which is I think what a lot of people want, or the ability to bring in a 6-person fire team into the Blind Well. I think those 2 things would improve that activity a lot. And I'm also conscious of like, how is the power curve between the rest of this, because it feels like I'm running up against the high end of the activities. So between let's say 550 and maybe 600, what is the progression going to look like after that?
Yeah.
But right now, I feel like this is the most fun I've had with Destiny 2.
That's
so,
awesome.
By a long shot.
That's great.
And I think that's fantastic.
I think a majority of the audience are going to be in the camp, which is a very particular camp of Destiny 2 is the PlayStation Plus game of the month right now.
Yeah.
You can get that for free-ish type thing, PlayStation subscription. So what would they need to get? Because there's a certain thing you need to buy in order to even get to Forsaken, right? You need to buy like the DLC in between it, or how does that work?
You're going to expose my ignorance here a little bit to the way that PSN offer was. I kind of think I heard that it offered up that it, even though it didn't say so, that it also included some of these other expansions.
So it got people fully primed.
I just
mechanically.
don't
Yeah,
know.
it's hard.
Forsaken.
Like they have like so many editions of that game.
That's
at this
what's
point.
tough for an audience,
right?
Yeah.
And so like the thing you want to get is you want to get the one that gives you Forsaken and the expansion packs. I think that's either like a $40 just here's Forsaken, or there might be a $60 version. So that stuff can be kind of hard to sort of wade through. And there's also like if you just want to start Forsaken, they do offer you an item called a mode of, I think it's a mode of light or something, that will boost your character basically past all of those previous campaigns and just start you at Forsaken.
So hang on.
Do they have that in the game? I haven't seen it.
I think I have one of those items, but I haven't used it yet.
So hang on. This is very mechanical and very stupid, but I can just buy Forsaken if I've never played a Destiny game. Just buy that $40 thing and play.
No, I think if you don't have the base game, you might have to pay $60.
Okay.
But at that point, you get an item that would, like, if you just want to ignore Destiny 2's campaign, which I think it's worth playing.
Yeah.
You can buy an item that boosts you that starts you at Forsaken effectively.
Okay. Oh boy, Destiny.
Yeah.
Help us love you.
I think that one of the things, if somebody really was curious about Destiny and they either had played the core Destiny 2 experience and they liked it and then they left just because they did and they went to play other things, or they didn't like it, I think one of the things that you could do at this point, particularly because of the PSN offer, is you could play through a lot of that core stuff with the new systems in place, and you could get a sense for how the gameplay flow has changed.
Okay.
That stuff is apparent whether you have Forsaken or not. Whether you decide to spend the money to go in and play Forsaken, you would be able to see the way these new weapon slots things make play a lot more fun. That you have your snipers and your shotguns and your fusion rifles up in your upper two slots, and you can do more with them. You'd get to see the way that the competitive game feels more competitive. A lot of that stuff is going to be available just by hopping in and playing like a free PSN version of Destiny 2. And then if you're like, yeah, this is pretty sweet, then you could like check and see like, okay, well, what do I need to do to get, the things I need to play through the other expansions, or do I want to just jump up to Forsaken? I'm sorry, I don't know all the details of like how you would do that. Because I've just kind of been playing along as it's happened.
Yep, there's so many different on-ramps
plugged
here. It's
in
a
there.
mess. Totally get it.
But I think that the game is in as strong of a place as it has been.
Great.
And worth exploring.
And so you're writing a review.
Yeah.
Do you have any time frame in mind for when that review is going to be out?
This has been a tricky one, to be honest, because they've been very upfront, Bungie has, and their partners at High Moon, about plans to unfold the content in that game gradually. They've talked about the Dreaming City having multiple iterations almost, it sounds like, where it's going to change over time.
So we're waiting for some of those big climactic changes?
At the very least, we're thinking about like holding until we get a chance to see the raid here.
Cool.
So it's going to be a few days. We feel pretty strongly as a editorial outlet about trying to offer a meaningful evaluation in a review that takes into account the majority of what a game has to offer. And Destiny 2 Forsaken, by its nature, is a game that's unfolding over time. And so we're trying to strike a balance between like paying attention to that, but also making sure to do things like this,
right,
where we talk about it even as we're evaluating
Get some sort of word out. But for now, seems excellent. Was your phrasing?
I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine anybody not really digging into this thing. I mean, it's like a Western themed revenge story set with outer space like magic and crazy, like a crazy elven land that's been cursed, and it's just got all sorts of like fun,
really strong
little
in that
dinner bell for dorks. Here we go.
It's
Come on down, everybody.
Like, if you were into like sci-fi and fantasy tropes, there's a lot of that good stuff that's just like baked in here to make for a great gaming experience. And I certainly feel like as a longtime player, it's worth it for anybody who has played it. And if you haven't played Destiny 2 yet, or even if you've never played any Destiny stuff, this would be an awesome time to just drop in and like just play through the whole darn thing.
There's a lot to tackle.
This time the lore is in the game. You can go read it in the game.
That's
right.
true.
That's
and they're
right.
selling a book on the side.
They are.
How do you feel about that, Miller? What is it? So
I
it's
think
like all the Grimoire cards?
Yeah, and I don't know the exact details of what's going to be in there. I know some of it's going to be the Grimoire cards, and maybe that's all of it.
Okay.
Or maybe they're going to have some other stuff in there too. But just as like a lore dork for Destiny stuff, I think it's great to have more avenues for people to explore that stuff, because so much of the Destiny story history that's been in game has been sort of at times almost adolescent in its approach to communicating itself. And the grimoire and the lore entries are much more sophisticated.
Poetic.
At times poetic, at times really hard science fiction stuff that's like, oh, there's time travel and there's like weird simulations of reality going on, and there's all these unusual contemplations about the nature of being deathless and immortal as a guardian, like stuff that's really
Get it out
interesting.
there. Let people absorb
and they put
it.
that stuff into the lore, and a lot of it now is now on offer in game, that you're finding things in the game and you're picking up these little stories, and while you're on loading screens or while you're waiting for your buddy to log in, you can read that thing.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, oh, that was a cool little story.
Yeah, for sure. That was just a clip from a larger show called The Game Informer Show. You can find it on iTunes, Google Play, or GameInformer.com. We take the fun opportunities and exclusive information from Game Informer magazine and boil it into a show that airs every Thursday with exclusive cover story information, developer interviews, a lot of fun stuff. So come love games with us.